If you clicked on this video out of curiosity, no, I don't hate Jesus. Hear me out. It's just that a lot of y'all Christians are bad ambassadors. Y'all are bad representatives of the true message that Jesus was trying to bring out in the gospel or in the mythology of Christianity. I love Jesus and I love Christianity. I just don't like the people who push Christianity. Meaning, I like the story of Jesus. I like what it represents. I like the meaning and the purpose and the lesson behind it. But the people who are responsible for pushing it out like to filter the message and like to add their own little razzle-dazzle to it. And furthermore, tries to push it down people's throats. And they add on to something that's not even in the gospel, the concept of hell and the devil. It doesn't make any type of sense. So I got a message this morning on my Instagram by a brother man, and he basically was asking me about Jesus, and he was like, well, if you don't believe in Jesus, how is it that they are trying to cancel Jesus? Now, I don't know who's trying to cancel Jesus. I don't know what agenda this is coming from, but this is what he's telling me. He said that Jesus is not being taught in the schools. You can't say his name on television. So he was like, if the powers that be are trying to cancel out Jesus, how is it that you are trying to go against him as well? Why do so many people have an issue with Jesus? What's the problem with Jesus? And I'll speak from my perspective, right? First, I'll deal with the powers that be, the elites, the naughties, and all this other type of stuff, right? They don't care about your Jesus. If they did, there wouldn't be churches on every block. They don't give a damn about whether or not you believe in Jesus or not, but I guarantee you believing in Jesus benefits them more than it benefits you. How could you say that, Tyrone? How could you say such a thing? There is power in the name of Jesus. Every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that Jesus is Lord. Turn my car off for this real quick. Negroid, Jesus ain't coming back. And for whatever reason, that might be bold words to say in 2024, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Now, I don't know why that will be controversial to say in this day and age, but people might deem it to be disrespectful to their faith, to their belief system. You know, it's kind of like you can't tell a little kid that Santa Claus ain't coming to town because Santa Claus don't exist. There is no tooth fairy that's going to get your tooth and give you $1 or $2 because there is no tooth fairy. There isn't going to be somebody hiding eggs around springtime because there is no Easter bunny. And what's so interesting, right? I'm reading this book, Holy Misogyny, because I'm doing a personal study on how the early church used to admire the divine feminine. And it wasn't until the Romans, when they had put their hands onto Christianity, when they started to utilize Christianity politically and started to ban out and cast out, heathenism and paganism, all these different things, that they began to take out the mother goddess. They began to take out the presence of the feminine. But the early churches during the 1st and 2nd century, they used to have these different debates about the divinity of Jesus. But one thing that most of the churches could stand for, most of the things that the churches could actually, all be in agreement with, is that the story of Jesus wasn't to be taken in a literal format. Most of them were concerning, they were having debates about the divinity of Jesus, whether or not he was with this Trinity, this Trinitarian concept, or how did he die, and all these different things. They had all type of debates going on during the early churches. But one thing that they could all most likely agree with is that Jesus was not a literal character. But then again, if you did have people during that time and organizations and cults during that time that believed in Jesus, it was no different than the cults during that time that believed in Dionysus. People who believed in Zeus, cults that believed in worshiping Aphrodite, cults that believed in worshiping Apollo, Orpheus, and so on and so forth. And so you had these different cults during this time that would worship these entities and these gods, Serapis and such. And the thing is, these entities were symbols for them to have courage, for them to have, a sense of being, a sense of identity. And, the Christian concept and the Christian faith has many roots to Greek mythology. It has different roots to Kemetic mythology and so on and so forth. You'll see a lot of elements from different mythologies in the Bible, in the Gospels. And that's not to discredit the Gospel. That's to admire the beauty and the mysticism in the Gospel. But see, Christians have a way of thinking that their way is the only way, so they have to be different from everybody. And when you study history, that's just never the case. Everybody has learned something or have been inspired by something from one culture to another. And if you study, Eastern philosophies and Eastern mythologies and Eastern religions and Eastern spiritual systems, you're going to see a similarity with everything concerning their different faiths, different rituals and routines and traditions and so on and so forth. So it would be intellectually dishonest for you to come to some form of conclusion that Jesus existed. Now, was there a person during this time that believed, was there a person during the time of the first century, during the time that Jesus would have supposedly lived, that there was a person that inspired the character of Jesus? I'll be open to that, because just like St. Nicholas inspired Santa Claus, there could have been a person during that time that inspired the figure of Jesus. Not in disagreement to that. What I'm trying to tell you is that the myth that is created in the Gospels, the stories that was created or inspired to be created by the person, does not exist. The person that have walked on water and gave sight to the blind and healed the sick and raised the dead and rose up after 3 days, that person did not exist. The Bible even tells you that person did not exist. How could you say that, Tyrone? Because in the Bible, it tells you that you died with Christ and you resurrected with Christ. Now, do you recall any time that you died and resurrected with Christ? No. Why? Because it is not a literal event. It didn't literally happen. It doesn't literally happen. This is a transformation that happens internally, that continuously happens. It happens every day. Every time somebody turns their life around, every time somebody wants to do better for themselves, every time they want to align more with their higher self than their lower self, they are dying and resurrecting. Which means they are putting aside the ego and realigning their shadow self with their higher self to become their best self. People will misunderstand the concepts in the Bible where it tells you to kill the flesh or to cast away your carnal desires as a way of just completely suppressing your beast, completely suppressing your shadow. And that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about aligning. The true nature of this is to align your ego, to align your shadow, your beast, to then become the beast tamer, to be the man who rides the dragon instead of slaying the dragon. That's the purpose of you becoming the Christ. And it tells you in the Bible that you are also the Christ. How are you a part of the body of Christ and you're not the Christ? Huh? How are you the temple of God and not God? No, don't tell me, really. Let me know in the comment section. How does that make sense? How are you the temple of God, but you're not God? How does God dwell within you, but you're not God? I want to know. Just let me know. So, I can't tell you, essentially, why there are certain people in this world who may have an issue with Jesus, but I'm a very observative person. And I'm very highly aware of how other people think, and sometimes we might share belief systems. Sometimes we might see eye to eye on certain things. So in terms of society, they could care less. And most importantly, how you see Jesus and how you perceive Jesus is the Jesus that they depicted to you. So the way that you see Jesus, the way that you visualize Jesus, that's the Jesus that's in advancement to their system. But when you start being revolutionary, knocking over tables, being a heretic, when you truly start tapping in to the God within yourself and becoming the light of the world, that's when you become a threat. That's when they don't want to hear nothing about no Christianity. When you start taking it mystically instead of seriously, when you stop being a narcissist and condescending and diminishing people, that's when you're going to start being seen. That's when you're going to start being seen as a threat. But as long as you keep having your little Sunday services and singing, oh, how he loves us, oh, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us, oh, that's not going to do shit. We could take it back to the black church. I searched all over, couldn't find nobody. I looked high and low, still couldn't find nobody. We no weapon formed against me shall prosper. It won't work. We could take it all the way back. It don't matter. Jesus ain't coming back. But that's how they see it. A lot of people in this world, the reason why a lot of people don't want to hear nothing about Jesus, it's not that we're canceling out Jesus. For people who are atheists or people who talk against the Bible, they're talking against the hypocrisy and the contradictions and the trauma and the hatred that comes from a lot of the Christian organizations. A lot of these, churches and these groups out here spread a lot of this nonsense, and they like to play, this person that diminishes and talks down on other people's cultures and other people's belief systems. You're doing the same thing. You're talking down on our belief system. No, I told you straight up. I love the story of Jesus. I hate the religion. I hate what y'all have turned and transformed Christianity into, which essentially is so ironic because now you have become the Pharisees. You're not even Jesus. You're not even playing as the Christ figure in your own personal life. You're playing as the Pharisees. And it's so interesting that with my devil worshiping self, I bear more of the fruits than you. How does that work? How do I bear more of the fruits of the Spirit than your black ass? That's truly beyond me. Like, I know how to keep my composure. I know how to have self-control. I know how to speak to people. I know how people want to be spoken to. I might be a little goofy. I might play around a little bit. I might be a little unserious. I understand that. But people can confess to how I control and how I carry myself. And really, Tyrone, you're just so nice, and you're really not an asshole, and you're just never mad. I never see you out of balance and out of how you don't have Jesus in your life. And it's like you can't be a good person without Jesus. Like what I talked about in my last Unfiltered episode. It's like you can't be a good person without having a little bit of Jesus in your life. It don't make no type of sense whatsoever. But if you're more curious about this topic of Jesus and me talking about it, and you're just like, oh no, I ain't really convinced, or you're more curious and you know what, you might be hitting on something, I might want to hear a little more about what you had to say, hit this video right here, because that video right there, that was a banger. All right, you're gonna want to click that one.